Hello students. Now welcome to today's lecture. Now on today's particular lecture, it will be a continuation of what was learned yesterday. Now remember yesterday I was able to explain to you the definition of a verb. Then I went further to tell you that there are different types of verbs. I remember I mentioned the performative verb to you and the state of being verbs. I remember I told you that a performative verb is an action verb, which is a verb that indicates a specific action. Whereas a state of being verb are verbs that do not indicate any form of action. They don't show action. They only indicate a situation in which a particular information is conveyed. That's a state of being verb. I hope that's taken class. Now, we proceeded to another aspect of a verb known as the regular verb. I'm just quickly taking a recap of what was learned yesterday. Here on regular verbs, I remember I told you that it is a verb that usually ends with ed for both past tense form and past participle form. Is that okay? We're able to take a lot of examples on the regular verbs, after which we proceeded to irregular verbs. All right? That means a verb that doesn't end with ed for both past tense form and past participle form. It means that this type of verb would illustrate a different arrangement, a different structure. An irregular verb will connote a different structure. How? For instance, the present tense form will be different from the past tense form. Then the past tense form will be different from the past participle form. Now you have an example such as drive is different from drove according to the structure of the word, in which drove will be different from driven according to the structure of the word. So this sample is known as irregular verb. I hope that is taken. Then the final part to which we took yesterday was basically on the aspect of dynamic verb, which is otherwise within the framework of main or lexical verb, which is a verb that indicates an action. So dynamic verbs are verbs that indicate a specific action, while stative verbs do not indicate action. Okay? You don't attach ing to stative verbs. For instance, it is very, very wrong to make constructions such as I'm not seeing from the back, or I'm not hearing you, all right? Because hear or see is actually a stative verb. So what do? You eliminate the ing form from it, and you have I can't hear you, or I can't see from the back. All right, is that taken? Now there are other expressions like that too that falls within the category of stative verbs, in which you have to look out for so well. Now for today's class, let's proceed to, here we have use of English, and we're considering forms of a verb. We're considering forms of a verb. Now, I want you to remember this, that a verb will indicate 5 different forms. Yes, a verb will indicate 5 different structures or 5 different forms. And let's examine each of the form. Take a look at this. Now, a verb will indicate 5 different forms. 5 different forms. And what are those 5 different forms? The first aspect, okay, you have the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. Now let's give a naming to this. This is actually the verb itself, and this is the verb plus s. Okay, that's either s or es, depending. This is a verb in the singular present form. In the singular present form. This is the actual verb in the primary form. Now, this is the verb in the past tense form. That's verb plus ed. Or you can simply write verb plus past. Now let's look at the third aspect. This is verb plus ing. What does that indicate? That's a verb in a continuous form or a verb in a progressive form. Is that taken? Now the last aspect you have, okay, verb plus en or ne, depending on the structure. So what is verb plus en or ne? That's a verb in the past participle form. I remember I told you that a past participle form simply means an action that began sometimes in the past, which has been completed in the present. I hope that's taken. Now look at the 5 different forms of a verb. Now let me itemize each of them for proper understanding. Here, like I told you, the first one is the verb itself. The second one is V plus S or V plus ES, means the singular present form. Singular present form. The singular present form of the verb. Now remember, you can as well have V plus ED, or you can have V plus past. Now what's the meaning? That is the past tense form. Past tense form. As the past tense form of the verb. Then the fourth form is V plus ing. Now it means that 90% of English words which function as a verb ending with ing, V plus ing. I was trying to explain to you that most English words that function as a verb ending with ing always indicate a progressive form of it. Do you understand? That's a progressive form or a continuous form of it. So this is a verb in a continuous form or in a progressive form. In a continuous or progressive form. So any of this is quite acceptable. Now let's look at the fifth part. Now the fifth part here, you have verb plus en or verb plus ne. So any of this is acceptable. Now what does verb plus en or verb plus ne? What I mean by that is verb that ends with en or verb that ends with ne would always indicate the past participle form, an action that began in the past, all right, which has a conclusive evidence in the present. Now, verb plus en or verb plus ne indicates a past participle form, okay? A past participle form. Now, these are the different 5 forms of a verb. You have a verb in the base form, then you have a verb in the singular present form, that's verb ending with s or es. Then you have a verb in the past tense form, that's a verb ending with ed. All right, usually for a regular verb, remember, but a regular verb will not end with ed to take a different structure entirely. Now, look at verb plus ing. That's a verb in a continuous form or progressive form. Now, look at the verb plus en or ne. That's a verb in the past participle form. Now, these are the different 5 forms of a verb. I hope you're ready. I'm going to give you a sample to enhance your understanding. At the end of this sample, then I'll give you a drill to attempt. Now, look to the board. If I have a word like now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are the different 5 forms. This is the verb itself. This is verb plus s or es. This is verb plus ed, that's in the past tense form. This is verb plus ing, that's in the continuous form. This is verb plus en or ne, that's in the past participle form. And these are the different 5 forms of it. Now take a word quickly. Now if I have a verb like go, okay? Now I hope you're following. If I have a verb like go, now what will be the singular present form of the word go? So you have goes. I hope that's understood. Now look at that. What will be the past tense form? You have went. Now let me ask you a question. Why didn't the past tense form end with ed? The reason is because this word is an irregular verb. It's an irregular verb. So it doesn't correspond with any with ed for both past tense form and past participle form. It exhibits a different structure entirely. The reason is because it is an irregular verb. Now, what is the continuous form here? Continuous form is going. Okay. Then what is the past participle form? You have gone. So in the case of gone, this ends with what? With any. I've been able to answer this. Can you see the 5 different forms? You have go as the main verb itself, or the primary verb itself. Then you have the singular present form, that's verb plus s or es, that's goes. You can see the es here. Then here you have verb plus what? Verb plus ed, that's verb in the past tense form. But because this particular verb is irregular, all right, that's why it ends with a different form entirely. Now here you have verb plus what? ing, that's in continuous form. So you have going, then verb plus past participle form, that's gone already. Let me give you another example. If I have kill as a verb, now talk to me. What is the singular present form of the verb kill? So I would have kills. Is that taken? Now, what is the past tense form? I'll have killed. Okay, so what is the continuous form? You would have killing. And what is the past participle form? You would have killed as well. Can you see? So what do you observe? You can see that the past tense form and the past participle form are exactly the same. What's the reason behind that? The reason is the first one is irregular. I'm writing it out for you. So you could say it is known as irregular verb, while the second one is known as a regular verb. Can you see? It's known as a regular verb. Is that understood? Now, I'm going to give you a drill on the other side of the board in which I would like you to attempt within a few minutes. So, all right, so this is the actual verb, and this is verb plus s or es, and this is verb plus ed or past. This is verb plus ing, and this is verb plus en or ne. Okay, so these are the 5 different forms of this particular verb. I'm going to illustrate verbs that you're meant to complete. Now, if I have run, that's number 1. Number 2, I have come. Number 3, I have speak. Number 4, I have, let me think about another word to give you. Sing. 5, drive. Okay, so you have the 5 different forms of this verb, and you have an example for each. So the first one, which is number 1, you have run. I need you to complete the rest for me because I've given you an example to illustrate that. Can you see the example that I gave you? All right. So in your own case, I need you to complete number 2, then complete number 3, complete number 4, and complete number 5. Number 1 is run. Number 2 is come. Number 3 is speak. Number 4 is sing. Number 5 is drive. Okay? I hope that's understood. Number 1 is run. That's run. Number 2, okay, come. Then number 3, speak. Number 4, sing. Number 5, drive. Is that taken? Now, good luck to you. Your time starts immediately. All right, class. So I hope you've been able to attempt this particular drill. On those notes, let's get a correction for each of them, shall we? Now, please look to the board while we take a correction. The first word is run. That's run. Now, tell me, what is the singular present form of run? So remember, you have runs. Okay. Now, what is the past tense form? You have ran. What is the continuous form? Then you have running. Okay. Then, what is the past participle form? Okay, you have run as well. So please take note of this. Now, the base form and the past participle form are exactly the same. So please don't make that mistake. The base form of the word and the past participle form are exactly the same. So here, you have running. I hope you got the first aspect right. Let me take that here. The base form is run. The singular present form is runs. The past tense form is ran. The continuous form is running. then the past participle form is equally run, just as the base form. Now, let's look at cam, where you have singular present form, comes, and you have came, then you have coming, and you also have come. Now look at the 5 different forms. The base word is come, the singular present form is comes, and the past tense form is came. Okay, I hope you can see that. That's came. Now, the continuous form is coming. Then the past participle form is can. Now let's look at question number 3. You have speak. The singular present form is speaks. Okay, the past tense form is spoke. The continuous form is speaking. And the past participle form is spoken. Okay, so take a look at this. I hope this is clear to you. Now let's look at the 4th word, where you have sing. Now in sing, you have the singular present form sings. You have the past tense form sang. You have the continuous form singing. Okay, so you have the past participle form that you have as S-U-N-G, a song. Is that taken? Now let's look at the 5th word, that's drive. The base form is drive. So what would be the singular present form of the word drive? So you have drives. Okay, so the past tense form, you have drove. Okay, continuous form, you have driving. Then you have the past participle form, you have driven. So take a look at this. Please compare what you have as a correction to what you've written. Look at it very, very well. Take a look at the first word, which is word number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. Take a look at it very, very well. So important. So before we move to the next aspect. Now, I've been able to explain to you, okay, the different aspects of a verb. I also want to consider another type known as transitive verb and intransitive verb. So let's take a look at that. So let's look at number 1, transitive verb. Okay. Transitive verb. Now remember that a transitive verb refers to a particular verb that accommodates an object. It means that such a verb will contain a subject, a verb, and an object compulsorily. What makes it transitive is the fact that such verb has the ability to accommodate an object. A verb which doesn't have the ability to accommodate an object is an intransitive verb, which means that the structure will always be a subject and a verb. You could also have an adverb too in that particular structure. So a transitive verb, this is a verb, this is a verb which accommodates an object. So this is a verb which accommodates an object. So it means that a transitive verb has to do with an object. In a transitive verb, the structure, that is the structure of a transitive verb, the structure of a transitive verb is S plus V plus O. And what's that structure? It means that compulsorily, the structure of a transitive verb will be having a subject, a verb, and an object. I hope that's taken. Now remember that S represents the subject. Okay, remember the subject is the performer of an action. The performer of an action. That is the person or thing that designates the action. Then V represents the verb. Remember that another name for a verb is called the predicator. Okay, so the letter O represents the object. Okay, the object. Now, this refers to a component of a transitive verb. I'm going to give you an example. So, take a look at this. E.g., I kicked the ball. Now, let's take an analysis of this particular structure. I kicked the ball. Is that okay? Now, what structure do we have? I is the subject. You can see that kicked is what? Verb plus ed. That's a verb in the past tense form. Then you have the ball as the object. What makes it the object? Because the ball is the receiver of the action of the verb, kicked. And take a look at this. We can see that kicked is a transitive verb. Kicked is a transitive verb. Kicked is a transitive verb. What makes kicked a transitive verb? Because it has the ability to accommodate an object. Can you see that now? So, because kicked has accommodated an object, we can refer to kicked as a transitive verb. Okay? We only have some few verbs that are regarded as transitive verbs. We only have few of them. And we also have few intransitive verbs. Let's take another example. This is the first one. The second one here. I gave him the book. Can you say? So I gave him the book. Now this is a case in which you have two objects. Are you with me? This is a case in which you have two objects. I'm going to explain this to you in a very simplified form. I is the subject. Gave is the verb plus ed. That's a verb in the past tense form. Him is the object. Okay? That we can call that, let me make it explicit, can call that the indirect object. Look at what I wrote. I-O, that's indirect object. Then you have the book as what? As a direct object. Now, let me give you a further explanation to that. How do you identify an indirect object? Now, indirect object, most especially, would function as